you want to know what motivates a child to do well in school? Well, that's what we're talking about in this video. I'm Nicolene Peck, and I teach about parenting, education, communication, and this video is dedicated to motivating your child. There are three main factors that motivate your child to do well in school. So in this video, I'm going to talk about those three factors and also share some personal experiences from my life and my children that I think you'll find useful. Years ago, I took in treatment foster children into my home. They were all between the ages of 12 and 18 years old. There was one 15-year-old girl who was very smart, but she actually was getting terrible grades. I couldn't figure this out. In fact, I recognized very quickly that she was putting a lot of effort into her work assignments, her homework, and everything, yet for some reasons her grades were still bad. I talked to her about it and she said, well, I don't want to be one of the smart ones. I don't want to be one of the ones that does good in school because that's not cool. In fact, some of my friends might not like me if they knew I was one of the smart ones. And so I said, does that mean you're doing all this work, which is really great work, and you're not turning it in? And she said, yeah, I just don't want to be seen that way. That blew my mind. I thought, why wouldn't a person want to do well in school? How could she decide that social inclusion with a group of people who were going for a really low bar would be more important than doing her very best and knowing that she succeeded? This blew my mind. So I knew that I needed to help her find a new direction for her education. I decided that summer I was going to homeschool this girl. Now, normally you can't homeschool children who are foster children because the state technically is in charge of them and they don't usually agree with homeschooling. They want something that they can monitor. So I decided the summer, though, we could do anything we wanted. Now, I was a homeschool mom, and so I was used to homeschooling, and I decided that I would homeschool her during this time. She loved it. She learned so many things. She wrote amazing papers. She was doing so well. And I decided that we would share some of these things with my father, who happened to be a public school teacher at the high school. Well, he looked at some of her things and gave her lots of praise for her intelligence and the research that she had done and all of the effort that she had put into this work. And I looked at her and I said, June, do you see that this is something you are good at? If you allow yourself to not succeed and not do well at school just because you want to fit in or because of social reasons, then you're actually going to hurt yourself in the long run. And she said, yeah, I guess, but how do I overcome maybe not having any friends? And I said, who's to say you won't have any friends? Maybe your friends will actually respect you a lot more when you're honest about your own abilities by putting forth your best effort. She hadn't thought of that before and decided to put it to the test. Well, before I knew it, June was succeeding in school, and she had a few new friends who, quite frankly, were better than the old ones. But she also had earned the respect of her other friends too. They didn't hate her. She assumed they would, but that just wasn't true. So what were three factors that I used for June that also apply to every other person who maybe is lacking a desire to succeed in school? Well, before I get to these three factors, hit that subscribe button. There are so many great videos on this channel about education, about children, parenting, relationships, things that you will not want to miss. Subscribe now. Factor number one is love of learning. A person has to have a love of learning in order to desire to do well with their schoolwork and their assignments. If they hate the learning, it just feels like such a labor. They want to find an easy way out. But if the person gets the opportunity to really love the learning, that makes all the difference. Now think of what I did for June. I decided to homeschool her through the summer. She was able to study anything that she wanted wanted to. That creates love of learning. When a person gets the opportunity to study stamp collecting, to study medieval times if they want to, then instantly they feel like learning has a purpose and they get energized by it. Most people can become energized by learning if they feel like they want something at the end. So if it's just going through a checklist, going through a workbook, that can be very uninspiring. It doesn't seem like it's their desire that they want in the end. They're doing it for somebody else. Maybe it's the teacher or a parent or somebody like that. That just does not create a love of learning. In fact, if anything, it creates a hate of learning. So, help your children develop a love of learning by making sure that you take time to study things they want to study. And as they're going through their homework assignments and they come across something that's interesting, pause there, talk about it, study that a little further, and then just fill in the blanks on the rest. Help them truly love the learning, and they will decide that school is serving them and doing them some good for their life. Factor number 2 is connection. So in order for a person to really get inspired by learning and want to do well, they need to have a good connection or relationship from what or who they are learning from. If a person doesn't have a really great relationship with their teacher, you might want to work on that. Help them come to a place where they understand each other. Have some one-on-one talks so that you make sure that they truly do get along. If not, it could be the recipe for a learning disaster. They need to have a good relationship with whoever's teaching them, whether it's parent, teacher, or even the books they're reading. If the books are dull and boring, if they present ideas that the person doesn't agree with, then immediately they start to think, really, what am I getting out of this? And why am I doing it anyway? But if they feel connected to the teacher, then instantly they see themselves growing and loving the whole experience. So connection or relationship is huge. If that is lacking, that's something that needs some deliberate effort to fix. Factor number 3 is skills. A person needs to know how to stick to stuff, right? How to get through hard things. This means things aren't always going to be going their way. So I teach parenting. In fact, that's what I'm known for the most. My parenting program is called Teaching Self-Government, and you can find information out about it on teachingselfgovernment.com. In my Teaching Self-Government parenting course, I teach 4 basic skills for children. These 4 basic skills are really helpful in helping your children become motivated to do well in school. So what are they? They are following instructions, accepting no answers and criticism, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. Let's talk about following instructions. When a person learns to follow instructions, they learn to look at the person, or the assignment, or the task at hand. Keep a calm face, voice, and body. That means they choose to be okay about it. Then they say okay, or they disagree appropriately about it, which is another one of those 4 basic skills. Then they do the task immediately, and then check back. That check back is really important. It's huge because that's the opportunity where they get the feedback from the teacher. They hear they did a good job. I was one of those students in school that did well on all of my assignments and tests. And I knew that I did well. I did my best, but honestly, I was looking for that praise from the teacher. And when I didn't get it, I started feeling like, why am I doing this anyway? Because a lot of the stuff that we were studying was not interesting to me. If I couldn't get the praise from the teacher when I checked back by turning it in, I started to feel like, is there even any point? That develops a hate of learning. You become disenchanted. Now, maybe some teachers think, I want to teach this child a lesson. I want to teach them that they don't get to have praise for everything that they do good. But you've got to think of where they're coming from. They're learning something just because it's in the curriculum, not necessarily because they're interested. Now, hopefully a love of learning has been developed, but if it hasn't, then that praise is pretty much all they've got left. So make sure that you teach them the skills they need for success. How to do all 5 steps of following instruction is going to be vital for that success. And at the end of it, make sure that you praise them because they're going to be waiting for that, especially if they put in some effort and they're not necessarily committed to the topic. Are you ready to motivate your learner? They want motivation. They want somebody to invest in what they're doing, someone to connect to, someone to show them learning is fun and engaging and exciting and not just about have-tos all the time. So praise their efforts. Teach them the skills they need for success. You will be grateful that you did. If you've enjoyed this video, I know you'll love the next video. In fact, it's a full class all about creating that perfect environment for motivating yourself and others. It's called The Expectation Trap versus the Cycle for Success. So go ahead and find that video now, and I'll see you there.